Good morning, beautiful people, and welcome to 2022. Huge shout out to all the men, women, and support staff in law enforcement that work hard to keep our communities safe. So, today's video is going to be on the comparison between the California Highway Patrol versus a large major police agency. Now, this video won't cover police or sheriff organizations. They have elected officials and they can at times become somewhat political. But we're going to talk mainly today about if you have a decision between the California Highway Patrol and a major police agency, what should you do? One of my subscribers reached out to me, and this is actually a common question. He applied to multiple agencies, as I always recommend. And now he's got a decision to make, and it involves a career decision, like which way is the best route. And so we're going to start talking about the major police departments. And also, this video, not only it's not going to cover sheriff's departments, it's not going to cover small police departments. Small police departments can get very political, and I actually steer my students away from those. I know if you're watching this and you're working for a small police department, I've worked there and I know how things are. Normally everything's fine, but one thing happens and then somebody in a political position wants to make some decisions, and it can destroy people's careers. So the larger the police agency, the stronger their union. The stronger their union, the stronger the support behind you as a peace officer going out there becoming a public servant. So we're going to start talking about the police agencies because police came first, right? So how was it created? It was created basically because once the city became incorporated, they were tired of having a volunteer force, and so they created a police force. And then as crime evolved, so did the agencies, so did the assignments, so did everything associated with it. A major police department includes a lot of special assignments that I believe the California Highway Patrol does not have in terms of law enforcement. And I'll get to the Highway Patrol in just a second, so don't start throwing tomatoes at me yet. You work for a major police organization, you work for them for like 3 years. After 3 years, you're off probation. You can then put in for to take the test for detective. Once you're in detective, you could do other assignments, or you work patrol, you want to get into the SWAT team, you can do that. You're on patrol, you want to work for the drug task force, you can do that. There's a bunch of different assignments and specialties. There's traffic enforcement, when you're detective, you can switch into homicide, crimes against children, property crimes. There's just a bunch of different crimes that you're going to be investigating in a major police agency that is not going to be the case for California Highway Patrol. Now, those are the pros, right? There's obviously room for advancement. If you get bored on patrol after you handle calls for so many years, you can land into a special position. Depending on the department, that position can be for 3 to 5 years. After that, you have to rotate back to patrol, unless that agency has a full-time SWAT team or full-time detectives. That's like a lifetime appointment. If that's the case, then you're there for life and you don't have to worry about getting moved around. And so what are some of the cons? What are some of the cons about working for a large police agency? So when you say large, I worked for an organization that was almost 200,000 population, and we had 100 and some sworn, 130 or 50 including the reserves. And I consider myself a major department. We're in a major city, major department. But when you look at LAPD, the smallest substation in LA is larger than the agency that I worked for. So it's all relative when you say large, right? If you work for a small department, you have 11 officers, that's kind of small. But then you go work for a department with 300 plus, that's a major. And so this video applies to those majors. So anyway, continuing on with my assessment, some of my critiques about major agencies. You think everything is done fair, but sadly, promotions are at the discretion of a police chief for most organizations. For example, you and 20 other officers take the test, and you score, as I did in the past, in the top 5 on a list of 70 or whatever, how many people took the test and how many people got on the list. And so the final decision is made by the chief. Who does he or she want to promote to police sergeant, to police lieutenant, to captain, whatever, right? So although you did everything you could, you did the best, you're the smartest, you're whatever, the decision rests on the police chief to promote you. And so the police chief is like a politician because he has some favors, and some of the people that work for him, their captains, their assistant chiefs, wherever they are, they have favors that they've accumulated over the years that they owe to some people below. And so, unfortunately, you may be number 5 on the list, as I was one time, or number 3 on the list, as I was, and they can go down on number 46. They can go down to number 50, and they could promote number 50. So it's very frustrating when you think that you're working for a large agency where you believe that you've done everything possible and made the best person win is not always the case. We're going to talk in a minute about High Patrol, and then I'll tell you how that isn't the case with the High Patrol, being that they're a state agency and they have to follow state personnel employment guidelines and promotion guidelines. So anyway, back to my police agency. So those are some of the cons. There's a lot of things that you don't know. There's a lot of nepotism. There's a lot of people having relationships with other people, and those relationships influence promotional decisions as well as disciplinary decisions. Some officers may do something bad and they get a certain punishment, slap in the hand, while other officers that somebody wants to get back at them, they'll do the same thing and they'll get fired. And so it's important that you understand that even though it's a major agency, you're still dealing with politics, to a certain extent, right? Now, another con, you're stuck with that agency. You may feel that it's a large department now, but in 3 years you may have outgrown it. You know all the officers, you know all the supervisors, you know the community, you know all the bad guys, and it becomes mundane, right? And so even a large department becomes, small after you've worked there a certain amount of time and you've outgrown your promotional or expansion opportunities. Now, if you work for LAPD, for example, that's not the case. LAPD, you work for a substation, or San Francisco PD, you work for a substation, and you're not getting along with your coworkers, or you just don't like the beat partners or the supervisors, you can just put in for a transfer, and boom, you're working for another agency. So when I say large agency, I'm talking about the average large agency, not LAPD, not San Francisco, where you can pretty much 30 years will fly by because you will have worked 2 or 3 precincts, and same thing with the New York Police Department and Boston, Massachusetts, all those large agencies. I'm in California, and so here we have a lot of large agencies in the Bay Area or Southern California, San Diego PD, etc., that I consider large. But again, large to what extent, right? To what extent? If there's substations, then you have the opportunities like you have in High Patrol. But if it's just one major department in that city, you may be limited to what's going to happen. I've talked about in previous videos about the 3 to 5 year rule. After you worked for an agency for 3 years, you pretty much have handled every call there is to handle in terms of calls for service. But you start getting the itch on, do you get promoted, do you stay, or do you apply for other agencies? Because if you don't do one of those 3 that I just described, you start to get blackballed. People start complaining on you, there's stuff dropping into your file, and pretty soon you can't leave. So you're stuck there, bad attitude settles in, you become very sarcastic. If you're listening to this and you're working for an agency, you've been there, maybe you are there now. So the key is there's a magical time period that's 3 to 5 years where you decide if you're going to stay, if you're going to leave, or if you're going to try to get promoted. In some agencies, I basically did all 3 of those. One, I left when I tried to get promoted, and then I finally left. And so now I work as a college professor, and I have my law enforcement retirement from the previous agencies I worked for. So now, let's get to the Highway Patrol, California Highway Patrol, and let's talk about them. So California Highway Patrol is a state agency, right? You become a state employee instead of the police agency. You're a city, employee. They have the same retirement system for the most part. They have public employee retirement system, which is an excellent retirement system. There's a couple tiers of the retirement system. So if you're now just starting out, my best advice to you is to start a supplemental retirement system so that you can retire early with more money than if you don't start the supplemental retirement system. So the earlier you start it, the more money you'll have at the end, and the earlier you can retire versus waiting until you're grumpy and overweight and old to leave your agency and retire with some medical problems. Anyway, they're a state agency, and so you go through the California Highway Patrol Academy. It's located in Sacramento. That's only one academy for the entire state. I did another video earlier. The only thing I would add to that video that I did on the California Highway Patrol is that if you're in the military, because I talked about the age requirement being 35. If you're in the military and you're approaching 35, there is an option for you to take all the tests, to apply for the Highway Patrol, take all the tests, pass all the tests, and then they defer your age requirement until you finish your career with the military. So that's the only thing I didn't add on my earlier video, but I would recommend you go back and watch it as I talk about the California Highway Patrol. So anyway, back to their academy, located in Sacramento, top-notch academy, semi-military. There's a lot of military thing that goes with it. You're going to be sleeping there, living in the dorms. You're going to be dealing with, just some military people, right? Making your bed and keeping your dorm clean. And, if you get punished, you won't be able to leave for the weekends to go see your family. But anyway, once you finish the Highway Patrol, once you finish the academy, you can get stationed. You can put your preference to where you're going to get stationed, and maybe you get one of the three spots that you suggested, right? The main purpose of California Highway Patrol is traffic enforcement. Traffic enforcement. And so they handle traffic accidents. They handle drug interdiction a little bit if they're working with the local law enforcement agencies or the state, DEA. But for the most part, traffic accidents, DUIs, stranded motorists, and yes, they have a lot of pursuits, which I love. I love driving fast and, having, a well-equipped police machine like a Dodge Charger. I mean, that's an incredible rocket ship. Just be careful, those of you out there driving it. It's like having a race car in your hands, and that can cause a lot of damage if you make some poor decisions. So anyway, the California Highway Patrol, it's a state agency, as I mentioned earlier. Let's just say promotion, right? You put in for a promotion and you score and you get put on the list. And the state goes down on the list. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. The way it should be done at most police agencies. And unfortunately, it isn't. It changes from city to city. But for the Highway Patrol, if you pass all the tests, you get on the list, you want to get promoted, you will get promoted, right? Once your number comes up, you get promoted. Now, the only thing is they require you to move to a different department when you get promoted in a California Highway Patrol. Unlike the large agency where you stay there and you're supervising the same people, some of them that you worked with side by side as your B partners. But for the California Highway Patrol, you're basically, you're going to get promoted and you're going to get transferred to a different agency. If you're okay with that, that's fine. Now, California Highway Patrol pros, they have offices up and down the state of California. You could be working up in the hills, you could be working by the beach, you could be working down south. If you work in large areas like Los Angeles, etc., you may actually be handling police calls for service, domestic violence, and other calls in unincorporated areas of the city because there just isn't enough law enforcement to go around. So don't expect this video to cover everything, right? Now, another positive that I mentioned in my first video, the Highway Patrol, is that if you go through the California Highway Patrol Academy and you get hired by the Highway Patrol, and then after you work for them, whatever, you tried it, you passed probation, and you're like, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm tired of writing tickets, I'm tired of doing with traffic enforcement, traffic accidents, I want to transfer to police agency, you can use the California Police Post California Highway Patrol Academy to then apply to a full-time major police department or sheriff's department. So you can do that. Now, you can't do it the other way around. You can't go to the police academy and then after you work there for a while decide to go to high patrol, and the high patrol will not take a police academy in place of their training in Sacramento. Their training involves a lot of driving on the EVOC. It involves, a lot of, dealing with, coefficient of friction when we talk about evaluating skid marks and investigating traffic collisions, a lot of them fatal. And so you have to learn how to, take measurements, document, build your diagram, draw your factual diagram, all of which I became an expert in. I love traffic enforcement. But anyway, so that's a decision that you have to make. If you're applying to the high patrol and you're applying to a major department, you have to look at all the pros and cons. I have students who are currently working in the high patrol and they love it. I have students who went to the high patrol and decided to leave and go to a police agency. I have students working for law enforcement, police, and sheriff, and they love their jobs and they're doing well. And so it's going to be all about you, your preference. I hope that you take all the information that I talk about in these videos and that you double check with people that, that can actually honestly tell you the truth and not sugarcoat stuff. Because it's important to have someone telling you, hey, if you decide to go work for this agency, this is what to expect. If you decide to work for that agency, this is what to expect. One of my students that works for the High Patrol, he loved the department he worked for, transferred to another one, he loved it. Then he decided to transfer closer to home, and he hated one of the supervisors at that agency. And so that didn't last very long. He transferred out of that agency back to the original department, and then he ended up, expanding. The High Patrol does have special assignments. Watching this video, I don't want you thinking that it's not like a major agency. They did absorb the state police, so they do offer protection for judges and other dignitaries. There's also all kinds of other assignments in the High Patrol, like traffic enforcement, commercial enforcement, working at the scales, you're, some kind of investigator, your internal affairs. I mean, there are special assignments. And as I said earlier, they did absorb all the California State Police duties. So they do patrol the aqueducts, they do patrol state buildings. So there are special assignments that you can transfer into, just not specialized in crime like major police agencies that they're investigating homicide, murder or rape, robbery, assault with deadly weapon, gang stuff, etc., etc. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We started 2022 in a positive foot. There's vaccines out there. There's choices to be made. Employment. Take a note of this. I was just contacted by a former Marine who's telling me that they are giving, listen to this, are you sitting down? $50,000 if you want to join the Army, up to $50,000, maybe it's close to $50,000. Police agencies up and down the state are hurting for applicants. I mean, that's the High Patrol, that's local law enforcement, sheriff. So if you really want to become a public servant and you want to go out there and do your best to basically serve your community, have an amazing job, exciting job that changes every day, make really good money, all of them are making over $100,000 the first year, then you should consider applying for law enforcement. A major change coming down the pipeline is Senate Bill 2, post Peace Officer Standards and Training. They're the regulatory body, the board that basically controls all the training for law enforcement, is being pushed to do some police reform. And one of the things they're creating is a database to track all the complaints that police officers receive. So it's very important that if you're a student and you're listening to this, stay out of controversy at all costs. I know some of you like to protest, and protesting is fine, but if you go protest and you get involved with the local law enforcement, or you get a record, you're basically done. You're not going to get in law enforcement. So Senate Bill 2 pushes also post to investigate complaints against officers and to keep a database, as I mentioned earlier, of prior complaints, officers who've been fired from agencies for things that could have been considered a felony crime, maybe even if they weren't charged or they pled guilty to a misdemeanor. So police reform was needed. I've known this for years. It's just, the pendulum is really swinging hard the other way. One thing is for sure, if you're unethical, if you're a liar, if you're, you basically fib a lot and you ignore department policy, you won't last in today's law enforcement. It just won't happen. But if you're a public servant and you enjoy being in uniform and helping your community, and you enjoy going out there and putting bad guys in jail that are destroying communities and ruining people's lives or whatever, then go for law enforcement. But learn the new technology. Start wearing your body cams. Make sure you have it on all the time. Make sure you review it before you do your police report so that you don't get embarrassed in court later on saying that you lied, etc. When you're done with your job, go home. Don't hang out with your coworkers. Don't go out drinking with your coworkers. Go to your family, go to your friends. Hang out with those people that really care about you, and that's going to keep you out of trouble. I think that's pretty much it. This is probably one of the longest video I've done. If you have any questions or any topics you want me to cover on this channel, I am a former police officer. I've done a bunch of different assignments, and I'm currently a college professor. I do read a lot, and I stay up to date on research, current research. 2022 promises to be the beginning of a long police reform process. At the same time, law enforcement agencies are struggling to hire qualified applicants. Talk about struggling. It's interesting that the media loves to sensationalize anytime something bad happens to a law enforcement officer, but no one is talking about the shortage of officers, shortage of deputy sheriffs, shortage of California Highway Patrol, shortage of corrections, rehabilitation people. No one's talking about this, but I gotta tell you guys, it's a serious thing. If you watch my channel, it's a serious problem that the media has scared away people to the point where even students of mine that wanted to do it, that were gonna do it, started second guessing themselves, and now we're gonna do something completely opposite. And so again, I'm sharing this with you because I don't sugarcoat anything. This is what it is. It's 2022. We started 2022 with a different twist. Police reform is sure to add things, and you as an applicant, if you're currently in the process of applying to these agencies, stay away from bad influences. Don't hang out with people on parole or probation. Don't be having arguments with your girlfriend or boyfriend or significant other. Stay away from conflict at all costs. Really start reading books on ethics and how important it is to follow department policy and guidelines. And don't get me wrong, I don't want you to forget officer safety. Hey! I did that in class. Did you get that? I woke you up. You got to wash people's hands. You still have to be officer safety, officer safety, officer safety. At the same time, you have to know your department policy. You have to understand your department climate, what they will stand for, won't stand for. You got to learn to wait for a backup officer, not go in there before you have backup on site. You have to learn to do little things that will save your life. Don't have things rattling on your belt. Don't slam car doors when you're going to a police call for service. Learn the stealth approach, and learn that there's nothing wrong sometimes with stepping back. There's nothing wrong with putting the car in reverse and getting out, waiting for the reinforcements to arrive, and then to reassess, right? If you look at the recent police shootings we had in 2021, and where officers, lost their lives, unfortunately, if we were to review that and we start critiquing it, unfortunately, some of those incidents could have been prevented if the officers were just kind of slowed things down and maybe, there's nothing wrong with retreating and then coming back later. Eventually, the bad guy will be caught, and there'll be another day to catch the bad guy. But the most important thing is that at the end of your shift, you go home to your family, to your friends, or to yourself, right? You're safe at home so that you can live to work another day. All right, thank you for listening. I appreciate you guys. Please share and subscribe if you haven't done that. Share this video with other people who are trying to, get their careers going in law enforcement. I love you guys. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.